title is Towards a Granarchist Future.
Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for having me here. Thanks to all the other speakers, and thanks to Matt and John for coordinating this conference. Anyway, so in this talk, I'm going to continue exploration of anarcho-feminism that I've been doing for a while, which brings Kropotkin's anarcho-communism into dialogue with feminist writing on care and motherhood. In particular, I'm going to consider how Kropotkin's claim that mutual aid and mutual support are, quote, features of the greatest importance for the maintenance of life, the preservation of each species and its further evolution, with anthropologist Sarah Blaffer Hardy's discussion of grandmothers in her book, Mothers and Others, The Evolutionary Origins of Mutual Understanding. And this is a book in which she investigates how members of the human species develop the mental and emotional capacity to imagine what other persons are thinking and feeling, and thereby to act not only according to their own Machiavellian self-interest, but also on behalf of society as a whole. And I am unfortunately going to take a detour through philosophy, maybe too long of one. Given that our central term in this discussion is evolution, my first inclination is to inquire into the meaning of this term. Evolution, the study of how living systems develop over time, is a particular case of the philosophical inquiry into becoming. The study of how things change over time. The inquiry into becoming is typically counterposed to the investigation of being, which just thinks of things as like permanent essences, underlying all particular beings. These substances underlie our usage of substantive nouns in everyday language, establish stable identities in legal persons, situate consciousness and agency within human subjects. And, of course, people are like, oh, you're an essentialist if you talk too much about this stuff. It's actually a pretty difficult and nuanced topic, whatever. In contrast, the idea of becoming traces how things change over time and space. The manner in which Mitchell, right here, right now, is related to Mitchell 100 yards away from here, a second in the past, a second in the future, and so on. One of the first thinkers of becoming, Heraclitus of Ephesus, expressed this problematic in his assertion that no one can step into the same river twice because it will not be the same person or the same river, and the motto that everything flows. That is, the flux of forces fundamentally disrupts the stability of individual identifiable entities. So how does this flux occur? Yeah, how do these nameless forces interact with each other? Now, according to Heraclitus, conflict and war constitute the dynamic tension behind the creation of things. He states war is the pater, the father, the king, the lord of all. And some he has shown as gods, others men, some he has made slaves, others free. So for Heraclitus, the logic of creative emergence entails a set of patriarchal relations of political domination. Although the patriarchal resonances of Heraclitus's thought are not always explicit, his belief that force and conflict are fundamental to the dynamic of becoming, to the flow of change over time, has been widely influential. So in like atomism, empiricism, materialism, science, we get this idea that, things are like the collision of particles, like billiard balls knocking against each other. There's like Newtonian force, and there's that word force, Spinoza, we get this idea that, a thing's essence is constituted by like a fundamental drive. It's striving to persist in its own being, to increase its power of action, its joyful intensity. Hegel and Marx, you get this idea that historical development occurs through conflict. Nietzsche, this idea that, wills to power. are the fundamental forces that, become expressed through persons and groups. And, Deleuze amalgamates all these ideas and understands becoming as a process through which, desiring machines form assemblages that constitute identities. So I would say that this idea of kind of force as the engine, what is this? What is the engine of dynamic? Yeah, how does dynamic work? Heraclitus's idea of becoming exemplifies, in my opinion, the epoch in which early Greek society emerged from what Nancy Hartsook refers to as the barracks community, when the experiences of the masculine warrior hero, the hoplite, furnished the paradigms for philosophical speculation and social organization. Another Greek author who exemplifies this is Aristotle. And Aristotle, he opens his book on the political city-state by first acknowledging the home as a community. So the home is a community dedicated to the sustenance of its members, to their everyday needs and wants. So that's one aspect of it. But another aspect is that this community only exists insofar as it's dominated by a patriarch who submits this domain to an economic order that will increase his property, which is the science of economics, and which allows him to freely associate with other, male warrior citizens in the public realm of politics. So my question here is it possible to think outside of these patriarchal models? Can we conceive of becoming in terms of regeneration rather than domination and creative destruction? Can we consider community in terms of nurturance rather than dominion and property? So my understanding of becoming here is influenced by the philosopher Levinas, who describes that every stage of becoming isn't, just the collision of nameless forces, but comes from relationships with other persons. So the emergent individual, is yes, in an environment, yes, in an elemental medium, it fills itself with other than itself. And this metabolic relationship, the newborn entity, relates to its environment as nourishment, feeding from the world in order to constitute itself. However, and this is where I sort of differ from certain environmental thinkers. I really want to emphasize the humanism of this. The otherness of the world ultimately comes through relations with other persons. Our subsistence and persistence in the world is already constituted by a debt to other persons who have provided us with the material substance for existence. The oxygen that constitutes the substance of our being once constituted the substance of another person. The products that we consume are the alienated remains of the lives of others, cadaverous remains of their living labor power. So the dynamic of human becoming is not simply a metabolic one, but also a generational one, resulting not only from the incorporation of our environment, but also from events of birthing and child raising that connect us to generations of persons. We are neither self-created nor spontaneously emergent, but rather born into the world, dependent upon others for sustenance. And Levinas refers to this combination of material and historical debt as an anarchy because it occurs before the person's own beginning, and as a maternity in which I am bound to others before being tied to my own body. In her book, Maternal Thinking, Sarah Ruddick defines the maternal standpoint not as an instinctive disposition or a gendered role, but rather as a set of practices that, one, preserves the life of the child, two, nourishes their growth, three, prepares them for acceptance in a wider society. Given that human infants are not physically or mentally capable of taking care of themselves for an extended period of time, this maternal practice that nourishes and sustains human life is essential for both individual and collective survival. So the work of Sarah Hardy adds an additional dimension to this idea of maternal practice and highlights its significance for Kropotkin's claim that mutual aid is of greatest importance for species evolution. She explains that evolutionary development is affected not only by the genetic materials that are passed down, but the entire environmental context that conditions the expression of this genetic material, the phenotype. In particular, maternal effects, the environment that surrounds the mother and that the mother provides for her own child, the mother is the environment for the child, profoundly affects its development. Her capacity to pass on her genes depends on how well she can preserve the life of the child. However, the majority of mothers throughout history, can't focus entirely on a singular infant. Most mothers had to perform some sort of labor as well as raise other children. Therefore, the evolutionary success of child rearing does not rest on the mother alone, but on allomothering, which is the community of caretakers around her, persons other than the mother who are capable and willing to perform the tasks of child rearing rather. So anthropologists have found that the person who has been most reliable in performing this allomothering is the grandmother. The grandmother, particularly the maternal grandmother, dedicates herself to keeping both the mother and the grandchild healthy and well-fed, providing the most help to the youngest or least experienced daughter. Furthermore, anthropologists have noted that the grandmother becomes even more self-sacrificing and heroic as they age, more resourceful and hardworking to feed their grandchildren, and more fearless to protect them from aggressors. And this picture in the bottom is a grandmother monkey of some sort defending from this male aggressor and just getting demolished by him, but fighting him off. Yeah, okay. This presence of these allomothers, is essential for mutual aid because having this community of care allows mothers to the evolution of the mind, of the human mind, and that is what allows people to develop this skill of thinking and feeling, of imagining what other people are thinking and feeling. So the ability to dole out this care allows the child to grow the mind, to take care of others, or to think in terms of mutual aid. Let's keep going and let's be a little more speedy about this. All right, so I have a few closing questions. So post-human leftism, considers, development in terms of like flows and intensities, blah, blah, blah. How do we think of development as regeneration, as the generation of generations? And how would this, what would this mean for our practice as radicals for our communities of care? How do we think intergenerationally? And that was the premise of the talk I was supposed to give, and I didn't give it because I couldn't find a lot of examples except in the Native American communities. So, in the Haudenosaunee, sorry, I butchered that, Constitution, we have this idea that we must consider our impact on the decisions on the next 7 generations. And I just learned this in the, the previous panel. This idea of 7 generations is, in my grandmother are the eggs that give birth to me, and in my womb, I'm actually not a woman, but whatever, are the eggs that will give birth to my grandchild. Anyways, I'm going to close this with a quote. So I was taking part of a blockade against poisons going to the tar sands in North Dakota. And I talked to this in Tulalip indigenous elder, and she said, you know, quote, this struggle against fracking the tar sands is important because our planet is on fire. As an indigenous woman, I feel a duty to honor my elders and the legacy of my ancestors in caring for this Mother Earth. Moreover, I feel a responsibility to my grandchildren and the next 7 generations to stand up to the economic machinery propped up by the government, particularly the Port of Olympia, in perpetuating the warming of this planet and the poisoning of water essential to life. Anyways, that is a you know, really exemplary example of kind of intergenerational radicalism, intergenerational thought, and you know, manifestation of caring in a way across space and across time. And we need to do the same as radicals. That's all I got. Thanks, y'all.